When you're interviewing property managers to potentially take over your rental property, whether it be a turnkey rental property or any rental property that you want managers on, there's a lot of questions you can ask. And one thing that you really want to be clear on are the fees. So it may look like, let's say that one property manager has, I don't know, a 6% monthly fee and another one has 10%. It's really easy to be like, oh, well, I definitely want the 6%. But there are a lot of other fees that I want to go over so you know what to look for. And the drive for doing this video is I've more recently started hearing about and seeing property management agreements that have fees in them that I'm either unclear about, or it is a little bit of a nickel and diming situation. There's hidden fees sometimes. So I really want to give you a clear picture. So when you're interviewing property managers or you're going through the paperwork that they give you, mainly the property management agreement, you know what all fees are possible, so you know what to look for. And if anything's not included in the agreement, you can ask them directly. So the most basic of the fees that is going to be standard really with anybody is your monthly fee. I'm going to get into that in a little more detail in a second. That's the monthly fee you're going to pay every month that they're managing the property. Quite often there's a tenant placement fee. That's usually equivalent to 1 month's rent or sometimes half a month's rent. So if the property's vacant and they find you a tenant, let's say the rent on the property is $1,000 a month, your fee to them for finding that tenant is $1,000 a month. So, or half a month, whatever that's equivalent to. Most property managers now, I feel like, I don't know if this is a newer thing or I'm just seeing it more often, they do a re-leasing fee. So if you have a tenant in for a year and they want to re-sign the lease for another year, it's usually a little bit more of a nominal fee. The tenant placement may be the whole month's rent, whereas the re-leasing fee may only be $150, $100, $250. I'd say $250 is maybe on the higher end of that, but I have seen that. And then you possibly also a setup fee. So if you are just signing on with a property manager, you may have to pay them a certain amount to really get that account set up. I just recently saw a property management agreement where their setup fee was $500 a property, and to me that's incredibly excessive. A property manager that I work with just took over a couple of my properties and it was $100 property. So that's a big difference. Between 500 is a little crazy town, I think. So those are the main fees that you're probably going to see just about everywhere. And if you see those are totally normal. So real quick on the monthly fee, something to look for. Some, very few, but some property managers charge a flat fee. So like for a single family house, it's, you know, $79 a month, and a multifamily house, maybe it's $99 a month, whatever it may be. I don't see that very often, but I did just see one of those recently. So that's possible. That's a flat fee. Most often it's a percentage of the rent. So here's something you want to double check, because I just saw this in a property management agreement. You want to make sure that that monthly fee, and most people do this, that monthly fee is based off the gross rent. So let's say their monthly fee is 10% of the gross rent. Your rent's $1,000, so their fee per month is going to be $100 a month. The thing I most recently saw is that the percentage was not based on the gross rent, it was based on the gross receipts. And this was very strange, and I'm actually inquiring about this because I don't know why this would be or how this would even make sense. But for instance, they say if they collect a security deposit, that's a gross receipt. If they get fees from the tenant, that's gross receipt. So basically any money that comes in, that's what your percentage is based on. I've never heard of that ever, and to me that's a red flag. So that's something to look for, is be very clear on exactly what that percentage is based on. It should be based on gross rent, but make sure it doesn't say something weird like gross receipts. So those are the basic fees. Every property manager is probably going to charge them, no big deal. Some fees that are, I don't want to call them optional, but some managers charge them, some managers do not. This would include the management fee during vacancy. So if there's no tenant, you're in the middle of a turnover or what have you, are they charging a flat fee for a vacant unit? My property managers that I've always worked with, no one has ever charged this. I quite frankly don't understand exactly what that fee would be covering, because in theory, they're looking for tenants, which gets covered under the tenant placement fee. So, but I don't want to say half of them charge that, but I've seen it quite a few times. So you want to make sure you inquire if the property is vacant, are you still going to be paying for them? And honestly, it wouldn't hurt to say, hey, what does that vacancy management fee get me? Just out of curiosity. And hopefully they have an answer for that, because I don't have an answer for that for you. Another one I've seen is a utility management fee. So if they are managing the utilities, or this is usually an optional service, but if you want them to manage the utilities on your property, then you pay like, I don't know, 20 bucks a month or something for them to be in charge of all that. I personally don't understand that fee, because the tenants pay all the utilities anyways. And the only time that I'm responsible for utility payments is during a tenant turnover, and I just coordinate that directly with the utility company. So I give them a call, say, hey, I'm a landlord, I have an empty unit right now, I need the utility on, power, water, whatever. And I just do that myself. So, you know, that should be set up as an optional service, and it should say optional service, but look in your contract and make sure either A, it's optional, or, you know, really weigh out if you need that. Another one I saw recently, and this one to me makes a little bit of sense, but it also doesn't make a lot of sense, is a turnover management fee. So I recently read a contract with a property manager who, when they're turning the property over, they charge whatever the going rates are for move-out inspection, regular inspections, like if it needs any work or whatever, preparation time to get the repair bid. I've never had a property manager that charged for any of that, because what you want to keep in mind is, what is if you're paying for all of these little individual services, what is your monthly fee getting you? That's always my question, is if I pay a monthly fee for, let's say, 2 years and nothing really big has gone on or whatever, and then that tenant moves out, if you charge me for every little piece of that turnover, that confuses me. So in my experience, I've never worked with a manager who charges that, but I have seen it in management agreements. So look for it and be clear on if you're going to be charged for these individual items. So those are the ones that I would consider not optional, but if you see them, it's not totally crazy town, but I would inquire further. And this is gonna lead to a little bit of a bigger discussion, but we'll get there in a second. One thing that seems to be the mysterious fee is whether or not the property manager adds usually a percentage to maintenance repairs. All of my property managers that I work with, they tell me directly, you are only billed the direct maintenance cost. So let's say my refrigerator breaks and it costs $250, the vendor charges $250 to fix it. They literally send me that receipt. I see $250, they charge me $250. End of story. The property manager doesn't take anything off the top of that. They don't add anything to it. And there are property management companies who do that. There's one out of Memphis related to a turnkey company who, in their contract, it says there's a 15% upcharge to maintenance expenses. So if my maintenance expense is $100, I'm going to pay $115, and 15 of that goes to them. So the reason I say this one is mysterious is because in this particular management agreement, it says it right there that there's going to be a 15% upcharge. I'm not certain that if it doesn't say it in an agreement, that it means it doesn't happen. Like I said, I've never had it happen with any of my property managers. I've always been direct, you know, it's a direct billing. But I think it's a huge question to clarify with any property manager that you're talking to ask them, because I don't know if that's necessarily something they would always put in the contract. The assumption would be if it's not in there, they can't do it. But I don't know that that's exactly how reality works. So when you're asking about maintenance anyways, go ahead and ask if there's any upcharging for the property manager above what the vendor charges you. Okay, so 3 fees that I've recently become aware of that some people charge And I've never heard of them in my entire life before now. Insurance administration fee. This was from this is a turnkey property manager. It is $100 fee annually, and oh, I lost the description of it. Basically, they handle your insurance. First of all, they make sure your insurance gets paid, which honestly, if you have a mortgage, it's getting paid through your mortgage anyway, so I don't understand that part. And if you pay cash for the property, you could probably manage your own insurance. I don't know why they feel they need to do that. But in there, it also says that if there has to be an insurance claim on the property, this fee goes towards their time in managing that. Well, how often do you file insurance claims on your property? It's only really for big stuff, and how often does the big stuff happen? So I'm pretty itchy about this fee, and maybe other people call it stuff, but it's called the insurance administration fee with this particular management company. It could be insurance management, whatever. The person who told me about it and showed me it in the contract they were given, I think my exact words back were, "That's a bunch of honky." Like, I mean, cool. Like, if you want them to be in charge, first of all, this is a total sidebar. If anyone ever offers to pay my mortgage on my behalf, my insurance on my behalf, any of my bills on my behalf, I basically say no, because I want to make sure that all of those things get paid. I would, for a mortgage, I would never have someone else pay my mortgage bill, because if for some reason they didn't, that's a major consequence to me. So, little sidebar there. But again, why are they managing my insurance? If you want that kind of thing, cool. But for them, it was a required fee. So I don't personally agree with that. Another one I became aware of recently is a termination fee. So when you call Joe Blow property manager and say, hey, I want to use your service, like chances are in your management agreement, it's going to say, cool, this is a year-long agreement or whatever. And the question always is, what if you need to get rid of them as a manager? My stance on it is, if I'm hating working with you, the manager, you're probably hating working with me too. And if we're locked into a contract that neither of us want to be in, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I don't know. Every time I've had to get rid of a property manager, I basically call them and say, hey, we're done. Like, they want to be rid of me as much as I want to be rid of them, and they just do it immediately. A lot of contracts, which makes sense to me for sure, is give a 30-day notice. Here's our initial contract time, but it won't say it on the contract. But even if something bad happens in between that time, like, hey, give us a 30-day notice, we're all in the clear. Cool. One thing as a rental property owner, and I work with turnkeys, so this is big for turnkey owners too, is you are not, the property manager, for example, is not your boss. You own the property, you are the boss of your property. And if you have a property manager who is performing poorly, it can cost you so much money. And being the boss, I would never call them your employee, because it's kind of a degrading kind of sound, but they're also not technically your employee, but they are contracted to work for you. And if they stop performing, I don't agree at all that you can't get rid of them because you signed on. Like, no, like, what's an example? Like, let's say you have a maid at your house and all of a sudden your maid just starts tearing up your house. You get rid of the maid. You don't like, oh, well, we signed on for a year, guess I'll have to let her keep coming in. Like, no. So I've always been pretty big on, if you aren't taking care of my property, I'm out. So I don't care about contracts at that point. Like, the whole contract thing anyways is, I get why it needs to be there, but like, for me, I need an out. Because if you are not performing as my property manager, that could cost me literally thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. And I'm not going to stick around and let you do that because I have another 6 months to go. All of that soapbox to say, the one I recently found out about was a termination fee. So this particular contract, and at least this lets you out of the contract, but let's say you sign this contract with a property manager for a year, and 6 months in, you're like, not going to work. they'll let you out of the contract with a 30-day notice, but they're going to charge you the management fees for the remainder of the time. So if you make it 6 months, they're going to charge you 6 months worth of monthly fees to finish off the contract. Or if you're 9 months in, they'll charge you 3 months of fees. So it's a termination fee to get rid of them. So basically, like in the example of your maid, if your maid starts, tearing up your house, you have to pay her the rest of your agreement to leave. Again, to me, that butts up against the whole truth of the dynamic of the property owner and the property manager. Again, they work for you. Like, to me, that gives them a bit of an upper hand, but really look at and this is kind of off the fee conversation, but really look at how to potentially get out of that contract if necessary. And with that being, I've now seen a termination fee. So keep an eye out for that. And the weirdest one I've seen lately, I've been nose deep in property management agreements, trying to get a bigger picture of what everybody's offering and any hidden fees and all that kind of stuff. This one said basically that if a repairman or a contractor needs to buy or rent equipment to fix your repair, you, the owner, are responsible for the cost of that equipment. I was like, come again? Like, hello. Like, if you hire a contractor to rehab a house, they usually bring their own tools. So that was one that I had never seen before. So the thing that I was referring to earlier that I'm going to drive to a bigger point is there's a difference between property managers who just charge the basic straightforward thing, and there are property managers who nickel and dime. And I personally am not a big fan of the nickel and diming. It stresses me out to no end. I hate when people are constantly like, oh, you owe us this much, whatever. And I feel like when there's nickel and diming going on, there's a reason for it. The best managers I have ever had have only had straightforward fees, because when they know how to really do their job and they have systems in place and all that kind of stuff, they don't need to nickel and dime. So really be conscientious of, I've seen management agreements. I saw one today that just had the basic, like 3 fees: tenant placement, releasing fee, and the monthly fee. End of story. I've seen the ones that have all of this weird list of things, like to the point of making fees up. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So when you look at the property management agreement and you're talking to the managers, look for all the fees and think about any hidden ones that you want to ask about. The biggest one that could be hidden that you do want to ask about is whether they upcharge the maintenance or not. So let me run through this list of fees. So if you have a sheet of paper, write this down, or pause me, go get a sheet of paper, and then write this down. So basic fees, setup fee to get started with them, tenant placement fee, releasing fee, and the monthly fee. If you're buying a turnkey property, because I work mostly with turnkeys, I don't know if there's always a setup fee. Like, technically the management should come, they should already be set up on the property. So if you are buying a turnkey, actually, as I'm saying this, ask the turnkey provider if there's an additional setup fee or if it's already set up. So the setup fee should be only a one-time fee ever, because it's getting them established with your property. So setup fee, tenant placement fee, monthly fee, and releasing fee, all normal. And then don't forget, a monthly fee is a percentage or a flat rate, and what's it a percentage of. Then some other fees: management fee during a vacancy, utility management, eviction management. And the eviction management, I think maybe I left this out earlier. That would be like, if they have to go to court on your behalf or whatever, some of them may charge hourly, some of them may not charge, or maybe there's a flat fee to deal with your eviction. Make sure you understand what fees come with that outside of the actual eviction cost. I think I did skip over this one earlier. And then turnover fees. Do they charge you to manage your turnover? I don't think they should, but find out. The big one, like I said, find out, ask them directly if they upcharge anything on maintenance or if you just get the direct bill. And then the weird ones that I just found out about: the insurance administration fee, the termination fee if you want to get out of the contract. And the weirdest one that I'm baffled by is if the maintenance person has to buy or rent their own equipment, you're in charge of that. So I hope that's helpful for giving you an idea of what fees to look for and what ones to ask about. And then at the end of the day, once you have all of that information, look at the big picture of it. The biggest picture really being, do they just charge straightforward, or is it a nickel and diming kind of situation? And then you can drill down a little bit further and see which company is actually more expensive. Because it may look like one's more expensive, but they're really not, because the one that looked cheaper has a lot more nickel and diming going on. You want to weigh all that stuff out. And then really, as with anything in life, cheaper is not always better. You know, property managers, like I said, they can make or break your investment to a pretty serious level. So it's not worth it to save a buck if the slightly more expensive manager is going to be that much better. Your only goal, you need the best manager that you can. Again, they hold the fate of your investment in their hands. So, you know, be smart about it. Not the place to get frugal. And maybe the cheaper one is the better one. That's absolutely possible too. But really take the information about the fees and apply it to the bigger picture. You know, continue to ask other due diligence questions for the manager and really feel out who you're digging. So hopefully that helps on the fee standpoint.